Can you believe it's Saturday, March 1st? February and January is gone. This past week in Washington, D.C. and the world felt like it was a year. Bruce Fine and Louis Martinez joins us. Bruce Fine, how do you rate Donald Trump's first cabinet meeting?
I think it was a great success for Elon Musk and Mr. Trump. I think it was a little bit unusual because we typically have the cabinet as a peer with the president. But it was informative, and I think it shows that for good or for ill, Mr. Musk is going to be a very dominant player for at least the next 2 years. It's unusual that the cabinet would be paying obeisance to someone who's now a special government employee, but I think the American people care about results, and time will tell.
Louis?
Yeah, I mean, we also have to think about that this cabinet was confirmed in record times. If we go back to 2017, it took almost until April to get
Yeah, but we're asking about the cabinet meeting.
Yeah, well, okay, that cabinet meeting, for me, it shows that power dynamic, even just the placement of the people and how the interview went. When you had 7 minutes of Elon Musk pretty much talking about how he is doing his...
Shouldn't he dress up to show respect for the White House?
He did answer one question where he said very clearly that he serves at...
I'm talking about dressing up. The presentation.
Yes, I do not. Well, we've seen that being degraded over American politics for the past few years. I even think about Senator Fetterman in Congress also not abiding by that decorum. I do agree with that comment. I think Elon Musk should show some decorum, especially the first cabinet meeting where there's a message that needs to be sent, and it's the unity of the cabinet, and he does show himself as that odd figure in that image. Another odd figure in that image is Elise Stefanik, because she's not a confirmed member of the cabinet, but playing those two roles right now before getting confirmed.
Let me go back. Bruce, there's about to be a massive government layoff. Your thoughts?
I think that there certainly is bloat in the government. I think the issue that we're confronting is that should we drop a nuclear bomb or should it be more of a scalpel? And now the bloat has accumulated over many, many, many years. And I think that there also has to be concern if you're firing people in a way that's going to discourage replacements, you may be creating a dysfunctional government. And that's why I believe that even if it takes a little bit longer, it ill behooves Mr. Musk, who's really, I think, orchestrating the reductions in force, to do so in a way that's fair to the employees and is certain that he removes those who are not performing or not needed, but keeps the ones who are performing. I know that's difficult given you got 2 million employees and you have to have a case-by-case analysis. But I do think it's going to be very discouraging in having any kind of esprit which you need in a workforce to be functional, to just come in like a bull in a china shop and indiscriminately start firing people irrespective of their merits.
You know, Louis, there are many headlines in the mainstream media about Trump buyers' voter remorse. Listen, it's not just Democrats that are being harmed and concerned about all these cuts and all these layoffs across the country. I know they didn't want to show the town hall meeting with the Republican congressman, but I mean, those voters are outraged.
Yeah, and we also have Republican congressmen, Republican lawmakers who are starting to, rung the whistle that these cuts are in tension with funds appropriated by Congress, in tension with their own constituents. They're getting those calls, as you mentioned, in the town halls. And I think that tension between the executive and the legislative branch is going to have a reckoning at some point before March 14th, because at some point before March 14th, we're going to need to have a new budget to fund government through the end of fiscal year. And that's where we're going to see whether Congress is going to make the executive sign into law something that will make Trump abide by the funds appropriated by Congress in this new budget or not. So it's a tension that will be resolved in the next 18 days. And we'll have to see if Republican lawmakers in the House and the Senate will buck to Trump's demands and Elon Musk's sledgehammer.
You know, I must tell you, Zelensky was here yesterday meeting with the president. I've never talked to so many people who in the past have so vehemently opposed him, who feel so much sympathy for him now. I mean, it's almost humiliating what is happening to him, Bruce. What is the best he can expect. And this thing about minerals, digging minerals out of the ground, I mean, that's a nightmare in and of itself. I mean, I won't even get into minerals 50% to the United States government. But talk about Zelensky and where does he stand? And also talk about, it broke my heart. I must tell you, it cracked my heart seeing the United States vote with Russia and China on that resolution in the UN. I must admit it did.
Yeah. Well, Zelensky is in a very, very precarious position because no matter what is said about the Europeans, I think all history shows that the United States is the 500-pound gorilla in NATO. And without our full support, it's going to be very difficult for him to sustain the fight against Russia. He may need to be like Henry IV at Canossa with Mr. Trump, because Mr. Trump needs to project a position of strength, which is what his foreign policy is about. And after the statements that he's made about doing a deal with Russia, that he'll agree that we can make certain Ukraine never enters NATO, that Ukraine needs to pay like the United States as a mercenary force for its weapons, as though it has no national security interest in the United States, only the economic interest. I think my view is it's a meeting that is going to be very, very ill received back in Ukraine and in Europe. I think that stage has been set already with the approach and the statements that Mr. Trump has made. And I don't think a visit by Mr. Zelensky has or will change that dynamic.
Is Trump miscalculating on Russia? Can this come back to bite him? I mean, for him to have even said recently that Ukraine started the war, and we know that's not true.
I think that depends on whether you think that the liberal world order is over or not. Because there's some that think that it's still worth defending the liberal-based world order. And what Trump is proposing right now is just moving past it.
I'm talking about Putin. Is he not, does he have a blindness when it comes to Putin?
No.
Because Putin seems to contradict everything Trump is saying. When Trump makes an announcement, Putin comes back and shoots it down and says it's not true.
Well, we knew what was going to happen since Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. Russia was going to invade the country. Ukraine was not going to win. But a deal had to be struck.
Yeah, but I'm asking you something different. Is he miscalculating on Putin?
No, I think that we are moving to a world where...
You seem uncomfortable now answering that.
Okay.
Why?
Okay, because...
I don't know why conservatives are uncomfortable in criticizing Putin. Putin, let me tell you,
I'm not uncomfortable criticizing Putin.
You know, I agree that we should end this war. I think Bruce agrees with that. But giving Putin a pass?
No. Okay, and maybe you're reading me wrong here. We should have stopped Putin in 2008 in Georgia, 2014 in Crimea, and 2022 in the second invasion of Ukraine. Now we're way past trying to stop him. So unless we want to go on a full defensive incursion into Ukraine, reclaim all of Ukrainian territory, and tell Putin, this is not going to, we're not going to let this go by, which is not going to happen because there's not the political will in Europe or in the United States to do that, then you have to make some concessions. Is Putin going to test those concessions? Is Putin going to try and test those peacekeeping forces, going to try another invasion in a few years? Yes, most certainly, most definitely if he's still in power.
You answered the question. Finally, because I'm losing you guys, finally, there's a rumor that as soon as Israel has all her hostages back, they're going to blow up Iran's nuclear plants, Bruce, and they seem to be pretty bold about it.
I think that's exactly what is going to happen. We kind of got a dress rehearsal years ago with the Osirak reaction in Iraq. I think that Israel sees that they're getting no pushback, however much they push the envelope. Now we see it in Syria. They're not removing their troops from Syria. It has no sovereignty south of Damascus. And I do believe the United States has already, under Mr. Biden, deployed 100 soldiers to man missiles to shoot down any retaliation that Iran may undertake. So I think we're already down that path. And we know that Mr. Prime Minister Netanyahu still is very precarious politically. This would be a huge, huge benefit to him. And right now, every day is just attempting to cling to power. So I think it's just a matter of time when he goes in and he does that, and he'll have the U.S. support.
Well, we're going to lose Bruce Fine. It's always a pleasure. You for joining us at the last minute. Louis is going to continue with us in the role of a journalist, asking questions and making comments. I'm Armstrong Williams, and when we can return, we're going to have a discussion on AI.
Once just a futuristic fantasy, AI now plays a real role in our lives, powering self-driving cars, analyzing medical data, and even influencing what we see online. But while AI has made life more convenient, it is also raising serious concerns about bias, specifically an ideological bias that leans left. Parents are experiencing the challenge of helping their children navigate the relatively new world of incorporating AI in their academic life, while ensuring that they are not being indoctrinated with one-sided thinking.
And so that is very concerning if these applications and systems have been trained or tampered with in a way where it is showing bias or leaning bias or, in any way.
Along with that, though, it's not just AI that people need to critically think with, and question and challenge. I think that's something that we have to do a lot in general, is always question what you're learning. Don't take it as face value, because someone can tell you the sky is, green. And if you just go along with it, you'll be wrong.
The control that AI has over the knowledge we accept and consume is subtle but profound. Consider this basic question. When asked which countries did Obama refer to as hellholes, ChatGPT, one of the most popular AI platforms, replied,
President Barack Obama did not explicitly refer to any countries as hellholes during his time in office. That term became prominent in political discourse later and is often associated with President Donald Trump, who reportedly used it in a meeting in 2018, though the exact wording is disputed. Obama, during his presidency, generally emphasized diplomacy and avoided language that could be perceived as disparaging other nations.
When challenged, ChatGPT acknowledged that it was wrong.
Upon further research, I have found that President Barack Obama did use the term hellhole in specific contexts.
But only when challenged. If not challenged, the false narrative would have remained.
I think fact-checking is extremely important. And AI, because it depends on which format you're using, it can really be filled with a lot of inaccuracies. We can't rely on AI to be our fact-checker.
For those who may consider this just another attempt by conservatives to complain about being canceled, suppressed, or marginalized, a recent study by the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization found a concerning misalignment of values between ChatGPT and the average American. Two facts are clear from the study. One, ChatGPT produces more left-leaning responses, and two, it more often refuses to produce content that represents a conservative perspective. During his first speech on the global stage, Vice President J.D. Vance warned not only of the dangers of overregulation, he also underscored the importance of ensuring that ideological diversity is the future of AI development.
And what we take from it is that the Trump administration will ensure that AI systems developed in America are free from ideological bias and never restrict our citizens' right to free speech. We can trust our people to think, to consume information, to develop their own ideas, and to debate with one another in the open marketplace of ideas.
And that perhaps is the test before us. Designing the tech is the easy part. The most important and difficult challenge of artificial intelligence is ensuring that the marketplace of ideas is plentiful and not policed by ideological gatekeepers. Reporting for the Armstrong-Williams Show, I'm Dee Dee Bass-Wilbon.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Joining us now, Mark Aitken, you heard all that. I want to talk about AI ideological bias and also AI as a fact checker. This is your area.
Well, listen, I got a lot of areas. AI is nothing more than a tool, and we have to look at AI as at this point in its infancy and very much a child. And by the way, the answers that you get out of ChatGPT or Grok 3 or any of these other AI engines get shaped by the nature of the questions that you ask, the prompting that you give it, and the challenges. You know, the example given about what country was called a hellhole is just a very small example of the inaccuracies that require challenge. And don't think of AI as the subject matter expert on anything other than perhaps itself. So, we have to take a questioning attitude towards the use of AI, and again, ideological bias. I've been working with AI engines for a year now. We've got an AI engine in our lab. We develop technology. We use it to help in software programming. It is a tool. It is a massive amount of computers that are strung together, and if used properly, are to the good of all mankind.
To me, I think the question. To me, the question is, knowledge is power. We've known that for centuries now. It's who gets to regulate artificial intelligence, and that's obviously going to be who ends up deciding which way it's going to be tilting, if at all, anyway. So at least here in the U.S., we're seeing this week Republican lawmakers pushing through legislation to try and ban DeepSeek, the new Chinese AI company, from being used by federal or government employees. But then you have President Trump saying that DeepSeek is actually helping this competition in AI and creating better models that could serve American population. So I guess I would have a question for you: is who gets to regulate all of this?
Look at some of this boils down to the very simple question: is it good or is it bad, right? And this is a question that has challenged mankind for all of our history. Is fire good or is fire bad? It depends on how you use it, and who gets to regulate and who gets to own and who gets to control. It does become a matter. I think internally to our organization, we're taking a sort of push-off view with respect to a DeepSeek, for example, primarily because of how is the intelligence that it is gaining being used, right? One of the areas of in another part of my activities, within this organization and with principles of this organization, is looking at the energy crisis that we're in. I'm not a nuclear expert, although I've been interested and engaged in nuclear technology since quite literally the 70s. But the fact of the matter is how we shape our thinking about any particular subject, it changes over time, dependent upon circumstances and needs.
Don't you think, though? Don't you think that we have to rely more on nuclear power and get away from the fear that we once had about?
Yeah, look, I think I brought it up for that reason. On the one hand, there's been a dialogue that was shaped, starting with 3 Mile Island, that puts people in a state of panic in some quarters when you mention nuclear. But nuclear has been used, successfully without mass casualties for 70 years. Look at our nuclear fleet as an example of how that has progressed through the ages. But at the same time, I can tell you that the energy crisis that this country has is not going to be dealt with based on the old narrative of what is green and clean, because nuclear is the only dense source of energy that is in fact green. And I'm looking at the Maryland Clean Energy Center's list of legislation that's on the table right now, and everybody is relabeling nuclear as green for very good reasons. The track record, the history, and the fact that it is in fact emissions free, and is a centerpiece of the power tools, the energy generating tools that we need to drive the expansion of AI. Data centers consume huge amounts of power. If you look at Northern Virginia as an example, in Loudoun County, this is personal to me, by the way, because you've got a proposal to run a 70-mile extension cord in the form of a 500 kV transmission line right through the middle of my farming property. I have a problem with that, when in fact there are other solutions rather than stealing energy, if you will. Obviously we're paying for it, but to get energy from Pennsylvania down to the data centers in Virginia, we ought to be generating the power, but we're at a 40% power.
You know, so Mark, in the minute and a half that we have left, you know, so many people across not only the DMV but across the country is just shocked at the astronomical increase in their energy prices. Why does that happen, and what can be done?
No, I would add AI to this equation. For example, if we're really looking out for a future that is getting much closer, the progress that's been made in the area of fusion energy is a direct result and byproduct of having AI. And why? Because AI has the depth of capability of bringing data together, has the the depth of calculating power to observe things and patterns out of statistics and data that are incomprehensible to individuals. So, by the way, AI has been around for a long, long time. When you look at it as what it is, in fact, is machine learning. It's just based upon different algorithms. The notion of these large language models makes that computational capability and memory capability more easily accessed by human beings.
You know what? I wish we had longer with you and Louis today, but you know how this works. We got to move on and talk a little about literacy and other things today. Mark Aitken, Senior Vice President at Sinclair Broadcast Group. Thank you so much for joining us, Louis. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back.
Hey, invite me anytime.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. You know, literacy provides the foundational skills to access information, to create skills, to participate in society, to give us real self-esteem, real self-worth. It's just the foundation of everything. And it's so shocking that in such a developed nation like the United States, we have this literacy issue that still haunts us. Willie Burton is a former NBA athlete and an accomplished nationally recognized K-12 behavior intervention specialist. Talk about why this issue persists and we cannot seem to wrap ourselves around it.
Well, basically what happens is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy and measurements, different measurements when they all should be consistent, that hide the fact that kids are illiterate. This then creates a problem for those students who don't fit in. Now they hang out with the students who also don't fit in, which then leads to crime, juvenile, and then long-term prison, okay? So basically it's our system not focused on literacy consistently as a whole. When we look at the literacy rate, over half the students in our country, more than half, are illiterate, who would become illiterate adults.
But it seems like it's not getting any better, though.
Exactly.
Why?
Well, basically, it's, in my personal opinion, I've gone to, and I'm not bashing anyone, but I've gone to lawmakers and pointed things out to some in different states and different areas. It's just my personal opinion. Some lawmakers get in the position that they're in, and then they get more worried about the lights, the camera, and the attention that gets with it, or getting a marriage out of it, or getting a home, or finally getting notoriety they didn't ever receive maybe at one time in their life. This is just what I've perceived. Because as a researcher, I also instruct at the University of Minnesota. As a researcher, my job is to report to lawmakers and governing bodies what we find in research that's broken or either not working that need to be fixed.
So, Mr. Wada Turkia, so who bears the burden for this? Is it the household? Is it the classroom and the teachers? Is it government?
It's everyone. So your question about why are we in a national pandemic? Why is it a crisis proportions in terms of the illiteracy rates in this country? President Ronald Reagan commissioned a study back in the 80s that really predicted what was going to happen today. And it's because this country embraced the whole language approach, and there are numerous lawsuits actually pending about the whole language approach, which is an approach to teaching kids how to read. And the kids did not learn how to read, and it's been, you know, COVID brought a lot of light to it, but this has been ongoing for the last 20 years.
You know, you talk about former President Reagan. You know, there was a time when phonics was in the classroom. Yes. I was a big fan of phonics, but somehow or another it worked, but it was removed.
It was removed, and without, you know, we're focused on the solution here at Beyond Basics, and we are a phonics-based curriculum, and we have the Gold Star standard for reading proficiency, which is 3 components. It's phonics-based curriculum. It's a one-on-one tutoring, but it starts with something that's fundamental, and it's a diagnostic assessment. The NAEP reading scores just came out in 2024, and across the nation, over 60% of kids are unable to read proficiently, 8th graders. We're referring to as 8th graders, and they're not reading at grade level. And you see, to Willie's point, you see the net impact, whether it's the demand for continued social services and increases in social services, it impacts someone.
But we also know that the intellectual gap in education commences before the kid ever gets to kindergarten. You talked about 8th grade. What needs to happen before then that is not happening now and we need more of?
Well, the good news is there's a lot of attention geared towards pre-K to 3rd grade, to your point. And in fact, so attention's being given in the early years we're focused on K through 12, but we actually just, and thanks to a shout out to a lot of the Michigan congressional leaders, because Congressman Huizenga and Congressman Thanader introduced a House Resolution 163 to elevate the conversation about literacy, put this front and center, because to your point, it's so foundational and fundamental to an individual's personal and professional well-being.
You know, Mr. Burton, it's fascinating. It disproportionately impacts men. Mm-hmm. It disproportionately impacts kids in urban and inner cities. Mm-hmm. But kids are not learning because of the hue of their skin. That's not it. Mm-hmm. It has something that we like to reduce it to race, and we like to reduce it to poverty, but we see so many kids in these demographics who thrive, but they seem to be in the minority. Why is it that overwhelmingly we don't impact the larger population?
Well, there's many facets and many variables that affect that answer to your question. One could be family dynamics. What are the importance of education in their household? Two becomes, okay, well, what's important to that individual? Then we have to get into self-determination theory. Connectedness, autonomy, and relatedness, okay? Connectedness, in order to be connected, you have to go along with whatever your environment is doing in the urban setting, as you well know, because you can get a lot of backlash if you don't. So what
does that mean?
That relatedness, well, the relatedness could be...
No, the backlash.
The backlash means, let's say don't go to school. Let's say if you smart, huh? Remember how nerds used to get picked on? Or people that smart?
And people frown upon it.
Exactly.
Yes, sad.
So that's a direct example of that. So it depends on the dynamics that may affect that. It could be many variables. But I think at the end of the day, one of the things that we can say and see is that in the end, literacy is not good, number one. But the reality of it is having support for literacy and tools that the kids can use is missing.
Mr. Water, I just read this week where a kid sued his teacher at graduation because he realized he could not read. And my question is, why did they wait until graduation? He knew all along he could not read. The parents knew he could not read.
Well, when Pam Good founded this organization 25 years ago, we started in Detroit Public Schools Community District, and we are there today. But she realized that there's, when you're dealing with these kids, they are convinced that they're unable, and that's simply a false narrative.
What do you mean they're unable?
They're not capable of learning. They're unable to learn. It's when you don't learn like the other students in the class, there's a lot of humiliation, and you feel like you're less than. Because when we get these kids reading...
But don't you have parents reinforcing that you can learn, you're just as good as anyone else?
Well, in a perfect world, if you're fortunate to have parents saying that to you, but a lot of kids feel less than. And when we get these kids reading, that light, it's transformational for their psychology, for their confidence, for their self-esteem, because now you've just proven out that, yes, in fact, you are capable, you are able. And so we always say, Pam Good always says, don't believe the label, the kids are able. And it doesn't matter if you have learning differences. Our curriculum accounts for whether it's ADHD, dyslexia, high-functioning autism. You got to stop with the excuses and focus on the solution. We know this methodology works. Pam's tried it. We service thousands of kids, and in marginalized communities. And we have guiding principle where we go where kids are showing up, because we recognize and appreciate that life is complicated for these kids. So we are baked into the school day curriculum. They come into our classroom just like they would, gym or art. They go to literacy class, and we go get those kids reading up to speed, and then they get back into their normal curriculum.
Mr. Burton, obviously these are kids, and they have no idea how they're destroying their future until it's too late. Why don't you remind those that are watching us across the country about what is really at stake here?
What's really at stake is your future. When I talk to kids in school, you have to meet them where they are first, not where we were or what we understand as adults in this engagement. But find something that they value, that means something to them, and then start from there. For me, I like to talk to the kids, especially middle school and high schoolers. I like to inform them that what you're doing right now is going to have a direct effect on your children.
You know, are there any innovative programs or policies, Mr. Waddy, that have shown the most success in improving these literacy rates?
Yes, the gold star standard to reading proficiency, which is the 3 components that I discussed. And there are many programs out there. This is a proven model. We've had published studies that demonstrate the effectiveness with 6 weeks. And we were even in the juvenile space. But in 6 weeks, we are getting kids reading grade level movement of 2 full grades in a 6-week time period. And we just concluded a program in a local juvenile, because 85% of juveniles are not reading at a 4th grade level. And again, people are convinced that these kids just they don't know how to read, they're not capable. That's a false narrative, because we just proved out after 5 weeks, these kids moved an average of 2 full grades in middle school, high school.
You know, what gives you, I don't want this to be a conversation where you can find no light or hope. Obviously, there are success stories that you have. Can we talk about some of those?
Yes. I get a joy out of when I go to a store and buy furniture and the dad happens to work there. I don't remember the kid. And he gives me half off of the furniture because something that I did saved his son's life, and he's in school and he's in college. That's one. 2 is a student that was on the road to prison, on drugs, now is in college right now, finishing their last year.
And it all starts with literacy.
It all starts with literacy. I give you the example that changed my life when it came to literacy. There was a grown man in a program I was working with, and he fought me tooth and nail. Not only to fight me tooth and nail, he had others to fight me tooth and nail. And he just joined in with him, and it was just this group that just didn't want to move forward, didn't want to read, didn't want to do anything. That man pulled me aside, told me, man, I can't read. That's why I fight you so much. After that, I never questioned it. I know that every time someone's fighting something, when you're trying to give them something, there's something behind there that they're afraid of or they're afraid of dealing with. That's all it is. They're not being mean. They're not being nasty. That's just something that they're afraid of failing at.
You know, if kids can go online, Mr. Waddy, and make a ghost gun, if they can go online and learn how to shoot a gun, they literally can go online and learn how to read books, to understand words. I mean, some of it can just be self-taught if they have the determination.
That's true in a perfect world, but you know, you have a lot of trauma-informed kids, and life is complicated, and if they've never been read to growing up, but you know, this is
a lot of shame to live with. If you know that you cannot read, if somebody's communicating with you, and you're not understanding something, and you're listening to something, and you're in a room, and you're absolutely lost.
So, just a personal story. My relative is a rising 7th grader. He tested in at a 4.5 grade reading level, and he lives in an affluent neighborhood. Attended our program all summer last summer. When I told him his score, when we test him in and test him out to see grade level movement, he tested out at an 8.5 grade reading level. When I told that young man his score, he was jumping for joy, jumping and screaming. And we see this with these kids all the time. Then he called.
They want to learn. They want to.
They want to learn.
Yeah.
And when he called his parents, he was bawling his eyes out, because it is, you know, it's a lot of pent up frustration. And so you give that child the key to, you know, the key to the kingdom of opportunity when you get them to read.
Takia, I appreciate so much what you do.
Thank you.
Willie Burton, how can someone get more information on this program?
BeyondBasics.org.
BeyondBasics.org. And you're the Chief Strategy Officer at Beyond Basics. And man, I'm telling you, your voice is so important, let me tell you. And the stories you told about the grown man, and you're right, they're hiding something. And so they have to do the best they can by being violent, being mad, pushing against you. And then when they admit the truth, that's when they can begin to empower themselves to find the solution to all that anger and what they've been hiding. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
Jack Kalavritinos, who's Greek, joins us today. He's a Medtech advisor and expert. And I also, for full disclosure, want to let you know that we have a professional relationship with Medtech, and so I wanted to make sure that was clear. But we're happy to have you join us today. Specifically, what I'd like for you to do is take us through how a patient interact with medical technologies, because it's so important.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. It's a topic that's so interesting because we all go see our physicians. We've been in hospitals, our loved ones. The people that we know the most about often are the hospitals themselves, our physician, maybe the drugs that we take. But I think a lot of people take for granted the medical technology, and a lot of research and development goes into all of the equipment that helps to treat us, but also helps to diagnose us. And we can go into examples of that, but it's an amazing $500 billion industry.
But when you look at all these headlines, they're full of negative headlines about Americans' poor health and obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes. The American Heart Association just noted heart diseases remain the leading cause of death. However, we hear a lot less about the role of Medtech in keeping people healthy. What can we do to raise awareness of the important role Medtech plays in promoting health and saving lives?
I love how you said that, because right now we are in the midst of hearing more than we have heard in a long time about chronic disease, and I think Secretary RFK Jr. has brought to light some of the important statistics that we shouldn't forget in terms of how in some ways we've become less healthy, even with a lot of technology. But I think medtech innovators and researchers would say, wait, there's some important statistics to also note, like heart disease fatalities have gone down by 59%. The number of days in the hospital that you have to stay, it's not just like some magical thing, or maybe they're doing things better in the hospital. Maybe they are, but it's also because of medical technology, where researchers have put time and effort, often side by side with doctors, in order to do the things that can keep us staying in the hospital a shorter amount of time, or even not going in the first place.
How is the United States positioned globally when it comes to medical technology innovation?
I mean, look, there's an association that represents not only American medical technology companies, and the big ones we all have heard of, J&J and Medtronic. There are a lot of smaller ones too. Look, there are foreign, non-U.S. medtech companies that are doing great things. I think in this country, because of our innovation environment, because of investors that are willing to put their money behind a lot of these technologies, you just have the U.S. being the hub of medtech innovation that other countries just can't say that.
How has AI and this machine learning transformed your industry?
That is a great question. I've been to the last two conferences at the Medtech big conference. Every AdvaMed does these, and AI was the big topic. But I think most of your viewers, when you hear AI, and by the way, that segment that you did right before this was fantastic about how results can sometimes be skewed based on the inputs. But healthcare, people don't realize that when it comes to diagnosing something, by using AI, like there's a dermatology handheld device that can take a look at a mole and look at 4,000 different cases that are in the database that this thing looks like. And then it can help to tell a doctor, you know what, there's only a 1% chance that's bad. You don't have to go see a specialist. Or it might say there's a 90% chance you have to go immediately because there's a very good chance that's skin cancer. And that's not a camera, that's a device that is using AI in order to better help inform the patient and the doctors.
You know, innovation is expensive, and the consumer pays for it. How do you balance, when you think about the consumer and how they're overwhelmed as it is in their own financial stability, balancing affordability with this innovation?
You know, that same question, you could be asking it on the pharma side. We're now talking about medtech, but yeah, who bears the burden of those costs? We have a system in our country where we have employer-based health care, that many of us get our health care that way. We have Medicare and Medicaid and the VA. So you have all these different payers out there, and they're paying for the bulk of our care, and then we as citizens pay a portion, you know, with our deductibles. It is important that the federal government look at paying for these technologies maybe in a different way, instead of the old way of, well, we're going to pay more for what the surgeon uses when they're performing the surgery and less for the diagnostic. Maybe things should be adjusted so that both are treated equally, because that diagnostic device that millions of dollars have gone into developing can be the very thing to keep someone out of the hospital.
You know, it does seem as though that we rely so heavily, Jack, on the foreign supply chains for critical medical technology. How risky is that for us?
It really is. And, you know, I have to be careful because, I mean, a lot of great companies that are American companies, I mean, they are sourcing a lot of their material and actually some of their manufacturing from abroad. So, you know, to use a sledgehammer on this issue of what is coming into our country and whether it's the tariffs, whether it's putting strong restrictions, we do have to be careful. But I think a lot of companies are realizing that maybe they're doing a lot of manufacturing in China. You'd be surprised at how much more now is being looked at India, let's say, where you don't have some of the geopolitical risks, but you still have some of the cost savings. But just like this news about Apple with the $500 billion investment, I think you're going to see more and more healthcare companies looking here at the U.S. because it's a more stable supply and without the kinds of risks and restrictions, you know, that are on their supply chain.
You know, what is the next big frontier in medtech, and how will it change healthcare, not just in the next months or the next years, the next decade, in the future?
Well, I mean, I would say that one front, this is going to sound boring, but this is a purely Washington thing, and we're here in Washington, well, right across the Potomac, but it's to get our crazy regulatory system that we have in this country. I mean, it's the gold standard. I served at the FDA when I was in the Trump administration. I have a great admiration. But there's a lot of inefficiencies too. So if we can get the FDA and Medicare and Medicaid, which is the main payer for healthcare in the world, to be more creative, be faster, be more patient-focused and free market-oriented, that will bring more of what is being developed to market. In fact, there are innovators that I talk to as part of my Washington Health Innovation Council that end up not bringing products to market, or they don't get the investment from venture capitalists that they need because they're too worried about how slow we are in this country with both regulating it and approving it here, and then paying for it through Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement here. Lastly, I'll say AI. I know that seems like it's very basic to say, but AI in healthcare is much more important, and it's much more exciting than I think people actually realize, because as my physician brother-in-law put it, and he's an orthopedic surgeon, it can give him tools that he would never have even after 40 years of being, or 35 years of being a physician. AI is going to give him tools to make him a better physician. And so I would say AI, the great researchers that are in the American medical device industry, and then getting government to be more of a partner to get more of this incredible technology to people.
How do we carry out, finally, the wishes of the current administration, cutting waste out of agencies without also, as the Hippocratic Oath of Medicine tells us, first do no harm?
Well, a very timely topic, since what has happened, as your viewers well know, is that you have DOGE and you've got two big personnel actions that have just taken place, just like take place in lots of companies out there, which is 10%, 20% cuts. It's a voluntary buyout. 70,000 people across the government took that. And then there is anyone that's been there for less than a year, we're going to let go. And there are areas like at the FDA where that has been a bit of a problem, because there are people who clear and review and approve the medical devices that you, me, your viewers are going to receive. And companies often pay a fee so that the FDA can have more resources to do what it needs to do. So good for Secretary RFK and the team that they saw that there are some specific instances where they actually need to keep some of those people, because actually companies had a lot to do with them being there in the first place. At other agencies, it's 100% funded by the taxpayer. So we do. Look, sledgehammers can be good at times, but at times we really do need the scalpel in order to create that balance that we need. But I think this MAHA theme of the President and Secretary RFK, it's going to help patients, but it's also going to help the medtech industry, because so much of what they do is dealing with chronic diseases, and that is exactly what RFK wants. He wants us to focus more on diabetes and cancer and chronic kidney disease, and maybe less on some of the woke ideology of previous, leaders at HHS.
And then, we always have these outbreaks of other disease in this country that America has not seen in a while. Your final thoughts in about 30 seconds.
Final thoughts on that is, look, it was a great thing. My former boss, Secretary Azar, was the architect of Operation Warp Speed. Amazing. But what wasn't amazing was what the last administration did was with mandates. So you can have a public-private partnership to ramp up technology like vaccines, but also treat people like adults and let them make their own decisions instead of firing them from their job if they don't get their vaccine.
Jack Kalavritinos, thank you so much for joining us, and all the guests that joined us on today's broadcast. Boy, it was full on today. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm Armstrong Williams.